I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Ladies and gentlemen, I have Sophia Plank here, who I'm not even sure. I don't even know how to describe this. If I'm stuttering and stammering on this podcast at the launch, we have just, gone through an unbelievable experience with Sophia in breathwork, spinal energy process that she executes. And so Sophia is like a beautiful soul who we met, and you can correct me along the way or jump in, correct me, or at the end, so met Sophia. She's got an unbelievable story of overcoming adversity. She is a example for all women, in my opinion. And her core kind of, how we met was like at an event, and she does fascial stretching, but then we got talking, and then it just exploded into all these other things. And then we have some connections. Turns out that she knows some people that I know in the energy space that, and then we just, got sharing, and then she's done some work on me, on my body. And as you guys all know, that I'm pretty focused on making sure that my health and vitality is critical. And then we did some energy work, some breath work, and it was off the chart. Like, it has been off the chart. The experience, everything has been fantastic. So I wanted to have you on the show so that we could have a conversation about a multitude of things. Like, there's an endless amount of things that we can talk about today. And so I just kind of wanted to say, hey, come on and let's have a conversation, see where it goes. And I'm going to pitch it back to you so you can, correct any of or all of my blunders that I just made in terms of sharing with the audience what you're all about. Because you're very hard to describe. I'm going to say that. It's like, it's very powerful what you do.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Thank you for having me. I feel very blessed and honored to be here. The conversations we've had so far have been just so expansive and beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to what's going to come from all of this.
Yeah, me too.
The fact that you said I'm indescribable, it's interesting. I remember when I first got into everything I've gotten into, that was one of the fears of like, what are people going to think? What are they going to say about what I'm doing? Because it's just so foreign and so different. And now it's probably the thing that I love the most, is that people are like, I can't even explain what you do. And I struggle to even say the name of fascial stretch therapy properly. And now it's actually just become a beautiful thing, because it just makes me, I feel like, so much more unique, and embracing that part of myself is somewhere I never thought I was going to get to. It's a gift, right? We secretly all just want to like stand out, but we're doing all these things just to fit in. And it's like, well, why are we doing that? So everything that I do has been very unconventional and maybe a little foreign to most people. So I think you did a pretty good job, thank you, of describing it.
Well, so just as you were talking there, just a couple of comments. One, I've heard you being called Dr. Stretch before, and then I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't really say anything about really what you do, because I think that's the smallest part of what you do. Mm-hmm. But then just as you were just talking there, let's just kind of rewind a little bit, because you have a fascinating story. That's probably where you and I connected most at the beginning when we first met, around what you've accomplished. But it's like, it was interesting because what you just said there, it really kind of tweaked me in the thought that kind of ran through my mind when you were just explaining the development and the process of what you do and all that kind of stuff. It's like and this is still a business podcast, but I mean, we talk about so many things outside of businesses that doesn't even matter. But I think it just made me think, wow, so many people start somewhere and they don't know where they're going to end up, and they get so worried about, the result, they forget to just trust the process and live in the process. And then it made me just kind of think about, where you started and your story. And maybe you could just share that a little bit. Like I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear it again myself personally, but I think like you started as, I would say, I don't want to say you were a lost person, but you were looking for something. You weren't lost, but you were looking for something. And I think that describes a whole lot of people out there. And a whole lot of not just, and because I wouldn't want it to be categorized as lost, because there's a lot of successful people who are doing some interesting things that are looking for something else, whether it's a shift in their career or a shift in their mindset or a shift in their mission or a shift in their purpose. And or their contribution and how they want to contribute in the world, and it causes angst. And so, because when we first met, you were sharing your story. That is where it kind of felt where you were. You went through a lot of family trauma and overcame that. So this will be the time for me to shut up.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Of course. No, I love that. I think what I was looking for was alignment. And when you can be true to yourself, that's how you actually step into alignment. So when we're constantly trying to fit in with everybody else and fit into something, then we're not in alignment with ourselves. If we're just following all these constructs and beliefs of what the world is telling us to be, that's not who we are. So I feel like that's where I was for a very long time. I was just in the, the rat race of life, just listening to everybody else and just doing what you do to live life like a normal human is supposed to. But through all the things that happened to me, it brought me to where I am. It brought me to my businesses, I should say. So this all kind of started, which I didn't know it started when it did, but it did about 11 years ago when my brother passed away. So he passed away when I was 22, just before 4 days before my 23rd birthday. And I'd lost one of my girlfriends 6 months prior, and then another very close friend of mine 2 years later. But in that moment when my brother passed away, that was huge. That was a big catalyst. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but it truthfully was something that I've had to learn and accept as something that really needed to happen. And I truly trust that. I have so much faith in that now. Not at the beginning. I was extremely angry at the world for a very long time. I was very much, victim mindset. And after he passed away, I kind of spiraled. I already had some really not great habits at the time. Yes, I was in the health and wellness industry. I loved personal training. I just finished school for kinesiology, but I was also bartending because I loved the money and the social side of things. So I'm an extremist, and I like to play on extreme ends, and I was on both extreme ends of these careers. And after my brother passed, I traveled. I bought an around the world ticket and I took off. And that was 2 months to the day that he had passed away. And so in that time, I didn't really process anything that was happening. I just drank. I did a lot of drugs. I partied. I had a whole lot of fun. I'm not going to lie, but there was absolutely no acknowledgement of what was going on inside of my body. And so I spent 2 years traveling, had a wonderful time. I came back home after 2 years and worked for about 8 months. That's when my other girlfriend had passed away. And then I decided to move back to Australia for another year. And while I was in Australia, I was living with my boyfriend at the time. And I just remember one day he said to me, I woke up and I was just in a bitter mood as per usual. And he was just like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why are you such a bitch?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You have a chip on your shoulder every day that you wake up." And I was like, "Huh, okay. Thank you for bringing that to my awareness." I probably didn't say it so nicely back then, but
probably
I'm
not,
grateful for that moment now. But he brought it to my awareness, and I honestly, really, at had to think, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really not happy at all. You know, I have this beautiful life, but I'm not happy. And so I was working at a gym in Australia, and I met this woman there that I was quite close with, and she was big into multi-level marketing. And she said, you know, Tony Robbins is here twice a year or every single year, something like that. And he runs an event, and a bunch of my girlfriends have gone there, and that might actually be somewhere where you want to go or check out some of his stuff, at least for now, and see if it's aligned, and I can set you up with his manager, and I can try to maybe get you a deal on getting into this event. So I thought, okay, being an extremist, I looked up some videos, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to jump right in and do it. So I went into a Tony event, had no idea what I was getting into. It definitely rocked me in a lot of ways. And after that finished, I felt like a different person, but I didn't really recognize that I had to continue doing the work. I was like, oh, sweet, this is a one and done. Like, I just put 6 days of work in and like almost $8,000. Okay, I'm healed, right? Absolutely not. I came home, the habits continued, not maybe to the same degree, but I recognized that I was definitely slipping away from everything that I had accomplished in that time. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to continue doing some work, and I need to search for something a little bit deeper. So I did some inner child healing courses. I got a coach, did a lot of like mentoring. And then I started to explore a few different practices, meditation. I got a little bit into journaling and working with other kinds of healers and modalities. And one day I was like, you know what, there's something still just stuck inside of me. And it just felt like this ball that I couldn't move. Like, I did all this other work and I was willing to try everything, and it just like, it was stuck. And so I said to my girlfriend one day, I'm like, I don't know where else to look and what else to do, but I feel like, you know, there's a capacity that I'm not allowing myself to get to, because there's something sitting in here that's keeping me from that, like keeping me from myself. And so she said, you know what, like one of our girlfriends, she does this breathwork stuff. Maybe it's something you should try. So I said, sure, why not? I'll try anything at this point. So I went into a breathwork session, and there it was. It hit me like a brick. And it was just so much deep grief that I didn't allow myself to ever move. And it just started to surface, and it was extremely emotional and quite painful, but I felt so much lighter after. I was like, wow, I didn't know how much I needed that. It's like, you know, but you don't know until it's really like put in front of your face. And
you sense it.
Oh, for sure.
But you don't know, like that's, and I think sometimes that's the struggle with people, is like they sense there's something binding them, if I could use the word binding them. But yet they don't know what it is, and they don't know how to get through it, or they don't know how to uncover it.
I find we always like look for answers outside of ourselves. It's like the answers are already within. Everything is already within. There's such a knowingness. There's so much intelligence inside of your body, so much wisdom, but we're always looking for somebody else to tell us what the answer is. So I needed to go within. And that's when I realized that there was so much sadness sitting underneath the anger. And that's what I've also recognized in this work, is that so many people are angry because there's sadness and they don't know how to express sadness. And so the easier way to express anything is through anger. So they pile this anger on top of their pain, and then they don't allow themselves to move through it. So I really discovered that within myself, and it was amazing how much anger started to leave my body, and how much I started to recognize like the gratitude and all the other beautiful things in my life that were so much more important, and also recognize how important it was to discharge the grief that I felt. I really, in that moment, realized that I had not done that work. I was just masking it big time and trying to hide behind every substance, or, you know, just going out and partying, gambling, like all the things. I was constantly doing something to just keep myself occupied from myself.
So just a few questions. Like, thank you for first of all, thank you for sharing. That's the one thing about you, is you're like really open about, you know, your experiences, and so thank you very much for sharing. And obviously I've said it before, but sorry to hear about your brother. And it doesn't actually stop there either, but we'll get it. We'll get into it. But you said a couple of thoughts. So like, you traveled around the world. Just for context, was that for adventure, or was that because you were running?
No, it was for adventure. It was interesting because I booked this trip probably, I don't know, maybe like 6 to 8 months before I had left. So October 29th was my date to leave. I think beginning of the year, that year. was when it was 2013 that I had booked this trip. And I talked about it for so long before. And finally, one day I just walked into like Flight Center and I was like, that's it. I'm just booking this. And the interesting part that really like sticks with me now, and this is what brings me into my spirituality so much, and what really has allowed me to understand that there's so much happening outside of this like three-dimensional physical world that we're living in. There's so much more. And that is that in the summer, before my brother passed away, it was probably 2 months before he had actually died, I came upstairs and I had so much anxiety. I'd just woken up, and it was something I'd never experienced before because I was just really not an anxious person. And I was feeling something within myself, and he just looked at me. He's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I just feel so anxious. Like something's going to happen." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Something's going to happen. I feel like it's going to happen to Dad, or it's going to happen to me." Now my father's 50 years older than me. So, you know, he is quite a bit older than most people at my age and the relationship they have to their father. And he had had a heart attack already before. So some other health issues. So I just felt like something's going to happen.
And at this stage, you're like in your
Yes,
early
I was
20s.
22 at this point. And so I looked at my brother and I told him, I was like, something's going to happen. And he was just like, honestly, he's like, I moved out west for 5 years. And he's like, I needed to do that for myself. And he said, this is what you need to do for you, regardless of what's going to happen to anyone else. He said, I'm home now. I'm going to take care of Mom and Dad. You have another brother here that's going to take care of Mom and Dad. Like, you need to go. This is for you. And I was like, okay, you're right. And so maybe 2 weeks later, me and my two brothers were sitting inside the living room, and we ended up having this conversation about, what do you want to happen with your body when you die? And he had said to me, he was like, I want to be cremated, and I want to be spread on my favorite mountain in Calgary, which is Mount Rundle. It's in Banff. That's where he was living for 5 years. And so the craziest thing is, a few weeks later, he was actually the one that died. And that's what really, like, now that I come back to that all the time, that's what hits me, where it's like, sometimes you just know. And that's what's brought me so much deeper into my spirituality now, and everything that I've experienced through my own, you know, breathwork journeys and plant medicine journeys. And like, that is just what really like makes me know there's so much more.
It's, you know, I mean, when you hear that story, it's like, it's shivering, honestly. Like, it's, and would you say, like, what do you feel based on your experiences in that moment? Was it grace? Was it, you know, serendipitous? Was it fate? How would you kind of put a kind of context to it post?
I feel like now it was divinely meant to happen for me to just be able to get here now and to do what I do. I didn't know that at the time, but I feel like that was like, this is your sign to understand that, like, this is real, this spiritual world and this healing space and the capacity of what can happen in alternate states. Like, that's a real thing. So I feel like that was a moment where, you know, God, source, universe, whatever you believe in, kind of was like, we're going to drop this here because you're going to need this. And I didn't know it then, but I feel like I know it now.
To that point, at the very beginning, you made a comment. You said, you know, I feel like I was looking for alignment. But I mean, that's a big statement, right? Like, looking for alignment is, you know, a profound, it's like when, you know, when people are in a bad spot and, you know, shit's hitting the fan, you know, excuse, you know, the saying, but when, whatever it looks like, you know, whether it's a death in the family, whether it's, you know, business, intimate relationships, kids, you know, just name it, COVID, whatever. And, you know, people there's these sayings that, you know, things are happening for you, not to you. And you're like, fuck you. Like, you don't know. And then they kind of get stuck in their story. It's like, well, when you were early days, you know, were you phrasing it like you were looking for alignment, or were you just looking for a way out? Because I just want to give context to the listener so that if they're in this position, this hones in on the one person that needs to hear it and go, oh yeah.
Well, back then I didn't know I was looking for alignment. I just feel like I was looking for something. Once I started diving into the personal development and healing space, I I didn't know where I was supposed to go, and I just didn't feel like I was fulfilling what I could. And so now that I'm backtracking as to where I was in that moment, it's like now I'm like, oh, okay, I was looking to figure out where I'm supposed to be, because right now in this very moment where I am in my life, I could not feel any more aligned with everything that I do. And I have so much blind faith and trust in where I am, but I needed to assess everything that had happened. And honestly, this is exactly what I took away from Date with Destiny, was I needed to take ownership for everything, because there was so much victimhood happening. And so now I realize that back then I was just lost and I didn't know what I was looking for. I knew I wasn't happy, and I was working these jobs, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I've always just had a really good work ethic, and I've wanted to put my best into everything that I do. But now that I've trusted and listened more to myself and what feels right for me and not what the world expects of me, that's how I've started stepping into, the business that I have now. So I had this knowing that I wanted to work for myself. I wanted my own business. I wanted, something to birth into the world, or something that was mine, but I never really had the courage to step into that. And so Dr. Stretch, my stretching business, was the catalyst for all of that, truthfully. And COVID was the beautiful thing that pulled me out of the bar and pulled me out of working in gyms full time, and kind of forced me into, okay, this is your chance to now build your business, and this is your chance to flourish and grow in this area. And I'm so grateful for stretching, because that's what's brought me now into the other facets of my business, where I find I'm able to connect with people on the table and then see where they're at, do a bit of a temperature gauge as to, okay, are you open to, exploring yourself deeper? It's hard to go inward. It's hard to get into the breathwork kind of world. Sometimes it's a little intimidating. Going in is intimidating. People don't want to sit with themselves, their feelings, or even their thoughts half the time. That's why we're so busy, because we don't just want to sit and be with and just allow ourselves to be and see what comes up. We're afraid of that, right? So the stretching portion of my business has been the most important, I think, because it's given me that opportunity to start having those conversations, and then help people along the way as to, where they are in their journey. Maybe right now, just bringing awareness to your physical body and what is hurting you in your physical body, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's just where we need to be. But maybe you already kind of know that there's more there. Maybe you understand that some of the chronic pain that you've been holding on to is way deeper than just physical. Yes, your physical body holds it, because this physical vessel is what we live in. But is it emotional? Is it mental? Is this coming from your spiritual body? Is this coming from your soul? And when they start getting a little more open to that, then we can start bringing in the other modalities as they are ready. So I'm so grateful for the table, because it's such a place of sharing and place of wisdom and learning. And it's a co-creation between me and the client. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we just, to me, we just talked about a lot there. And I tried to take some, as many notes as I could and try to structure this in a way, but I'm going to flip right back to the very beginning, which is, at the beginning, you felt lost, and you're behaving in a way, like you said, you're good at work ethic, you had good. And the reason why I'm going back to this is because I believe there's a lot of people out there that are stuck. Mm-hmm. Not that I believe, I know. I talk to them all the time. I hear from them, especially now with the podcast, but I've lived in the Tony world for, 15 years, and not just his world. Stephen Covey, I started with Stephen Covey, 30 years ago, 30 years ago. So there was, I've been around and seen, people who are looking for making a shift. They're trying to find something, to your point, looking for alignment. I love the phrase, and yet are, remain stuck, and they don't make the shift. So the reason why I'm sticking with this is there was a piece there where you said feel lost. But you're also were looking at the same time as you were lost. I got the sense that you were looking for, and I'm going to say like, I'll use the words next adventure, the next rush, the next high. I don't mean drugs, but I just mean like that next thing that can grab my attention in this, I don't want to use the word egocentric world, but just this world that we live in that plays on a surface level. Am I correct in that or not? I want to make sure that I'm not making, this is prior to you going to Date with Destiny.
Yeah, I definitely was lost, and I was masking a lot, and yeah, I was looking for something, but I was definitely looking for something to keep me feeling like there was something big happening. Right?
Yeah. Then, but you substitute it for the next, party, 100%. The next bar, the next, outing. We're going to the beach. We're doing this. We're doing, all these things at a superficial level or surface level kind of living is what I call it. And then what I loved is like you go to Date with Destiny and your biggest takeaway is I need to take ownership. Yeah. From identifying about taking ownership, because I think this is the moment where action happens for people or needs to happen for people, but sometimes they don't want to take ownership because they're blaming somebody else, or they're blaming this, it could not be somebody else, but something else, right. Their situation, the environment, the economy, the election coming up or this or that, whatever the hell it is that is drawing people's attention. They're just like, well, how can I start a business right now with like everything going on in politics in Canada and the United States? Like, what the fuck does that have to do with it? Yeah. So you talked about taking ownership. What did that look like? Like, what was the plan there?
It still took some time to really, like, I recognized it in that moment, but then I also didn't do too much about it right away until I started getting more into the inner child healing and recognize like the lack of love that I had for myself and all the things I was doing to try to make other people happy. But once I did take that ownership, it was like, okay, my brother died because I need to be a better support system for my family and a better support system for the world. And I have a big job here. Like, I've always known that I had a big purpose for sure. Like, I just felt that inside of my being. I was like, you've got some work to do here. And that taking ownership just allowed me to stop blaming external sources for why I wasn't doing what I was doing and why I wasn't stepping into the shoes I knew I could. So that was, sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow when you're just like, okay, these things needed to happen, or I needed to make that mistake. I needed to feel that shame and guilt in order for me to also understand that grace and compassion and empathy and forgiveness are such a big part of life.
So many people get stuck right there, I feel, and I would be curious what advice you would have for them, because it's like almost on that, you said like, well, I've got something. Did you know what your purpose was? No. Or no idea. But you knew you were meant for something bigger.
Yeah. I would say let the fear guide you. I am still terrified sometimes to step into the role that I'm stepping into even just right now. I just became a spinal energetics practitioner, and I know that there is a fear inside of me of the judgment and of what this is going to look like to other people. And I had that fear when I became a fascial stretch therapist. I was like, who's going to start paying me money for stretching? Like, they're going to be like, what the heck is this? And you don't take benefits? No. Why would I pay for this? And you know what? That business just exploded in my face in a beautiful way. I'm so grateful for it. And that is now the confidence that I needed to continue to move forward into like breathwork. So then I became a breathwork practitioner, and I'm like, who's going to take me seriously guiding you through like a breathing session on a mat? Like, everything I do is so unconventional that even I look at myself and I'm like, whoa. So it's been beautiful because it's made me face my fears of being judged, my fear of confidence in myself and my capabilities. Like it constantly forces me to step into what scares me. And so I think like letting the fear actually guide you. So if you don't want to start this business and you're just working for the man and you're in the rat race and you don't want to start the business because you're afraid of failing or because you're afraid of whatever it is, judgment or anything, good. Like you should be, because I think this human experience is about growing and evolving every single day. So if you're not doing that, then are you actually living this human experience to its capacity, especially? No, I don't think so. Like we're here, like life is your greatest teacher. So if you're not stepping into life and having things that kind of scare the shit out of you so that you can learn and grow, because again, your failures is where you're growing, right? The things you're going to learn in your life are going to come from your deepest pain. And I've experienced that big time. So the fact that I know that something scares me, the fact that I stepped into spinal energetics and was just like, okay, how am I going to deliver this to the world in a way that they can digest it? Like, I know I'm in alignment because there's still that fear. And so I would tell listeners, like, follow that. It's showing you the way. It's actually guiding the way for you, because this is how you're going to keep evolving. And once you keep evolving, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, like, look at this person. Look what they're capable of, right? That continues to give you confidence to continue to grow. But I think when we're just sitting here and we're just letting life decide what our path is supposed to be, okay, I'm just going to stick in this job even though I don't like it. You know, I'm going to just stay in this relationship because I'm comfortable and I don't want to deal with the pain of being on my own. Like, no, you're letting the universe decide where your life is going. And so if you want to start something, if you want to do something, like just go for it. Like let the fear be your guide, because you're going to regret not doing it at the end of the day. You're going to wonder why.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than living your life in regret and being on your deathbed and saying, I wish I would have, or I wish I could have, or whatever. So there's a couple of things in there that, so like, it's interesting that you brought it up and you identify it. I was going to come after you a little bit later in the podcast about it, but this stretching to energy shift for you. So we'll get back to that one later though. but what I love this, like, okay, so you identify the purpose. So here, a couple of my takeaways on this was you identify the purpose, and then now you've got this, you, as you said, it step into the fear, right? Let the fear guide you, I think was exactly what your words were, which I love. Well, how do you do that? One of the things that I find so conflicting for myself, as you know, whether it be in my coaching or whether I see it, like, not my coaching, because I actually don't like to coach, but I have many conversations that end up turning into coaching conversations in my life. But so yeah, you can't hire me as a coach, just as a, like,
You're disappointing a lot of people right now.
Yeah, no, probably not. But it's we see these like reels on Instagram where somebody says something and it's like, you gotta live for your future. You gotta, live in the present. It's like, okay, great advice, but how do I do that? Like, so what were some of the things that you did to, like, if you're at this precipice of fear, and there's this, what's called a chasm between you and what you desire most, what were some of the things that you did that were like decisive points that you could maybe share with the audience that just allowed you to go, I'm going to do it?
Right. A big one was like, where do I want to see myself in, 10, 15, 20 years, or at the end of my lifetime? Where do I want to see myself? And what am I doing now that's getting me there? What am I not doing right now that's getting me there? So getting rid of a lot of the toxic behaviors and habits that were not contributing to what that person would need. That was a big one, because when you start to flush those things out, you already start to feel like a different person, or a better within yourself, I think is a good way to put it. So that was the start really for me, was like, okay, where do I want to see myself? Right. And then from there, let's start to kind of like backtrack and take some baby steps, because of course, stepping into the fear isn't easy, and we need confidence when we're like starting to do that. Where we are losing confidence is by day not doing it. We're actually like kicking it back further and further and further. We're losing that confidence, right? So starting to change those little habits and then asking ourselves, okay, what's one little step that I can take that's going to put me in action to moving towards this? It doesn't have to be so many things all at once. It's just what's one little step, and then one more little step, and then one more little step. And that's how you start gaining the confidence in yourself. And so for me, a big one was like keeping the promises to yourself. So I started doing things like 75 hard. You know, I've really enjoyed wine and drinking for a lot of my life, but I also was like, you know what? I need to get on top of this and understand that I have self-control and that this is my choice, what I put in my body and what I do. And I don't want a substance or anything outside of myself to start controlling me. So that was a huge one for me because I already knew that alcohol had a pretty big like hold on me. At this point, I had stopped doing drugs. That I had a 10-year career with drugs that was a lot of fun, but very destructive and obviously quite toxic. And so once I stopped that already gave me tons of confidence. And then I was like, okay, drinking's been a big part of my life for a very long time. What if I actually just stop doing this for a little while? What comes from that? So that's what I'm saying about those like little steps. It doesn't have to be, you know, I want to start a business, so I'm just going to start it today. It's like, okay, what are the little steps I can start that are going to, you know, give me the confidence to be like, oh, you know what? I actually am ready to start that business. It's just things to gain confidence in yourself. So I think those are like key at the beginning. You need to be able to trust yourself.
As you are giving some of these things up, those, I think you phrased it as toxic behaviors and bad habits. What did you replace them with? Because I'm hallucinating that there was a friend group that came along with the drinking and the partying and the whatever. And so, and there's things that, you know, like, we're meeting our needs by certain toxic behaviors, and you know, show me an addict, and if they don't replace the toxic behavior with something that empowers them, that's empowering to them, they'll go right back to the old habits because on the other side of the chasm, it's empty. And so I'm curious, what did that do to what were the side effects to giving up those habits?
Well, I definitely had a lot more time on my hands to feel better.
But time is like you know, my mom's favorite saying when I was growing up was idle hands are the devil's workshop. Okay. So like we were always had to be busy. Like it was like we're doing something all the time, didn't matter what, but you were going to be busy.
Yeah, so, time. I mean, time is our most precious resource, right? It really is. It's the only thing you can't really get back. So I got really into just reading, learning solitude, learning how to just be on my own. And that's like an ongoing learning process, truthfully. But I started spending quite a bit of time on my own because obviously with the toxic behaviors and the toxic habits came a few toxic people, like you mentioned. So there was definitely partners at the time that I had to get rid of. Like I went through a couple of partners that had their own addictive patterns and behaviors. And I noticed that. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm literally dating someone that does something similar to me, so it justifies why that's okay for me. So that's the first thing that needs to really stop. So a lot of my friends, like I was honestly very open and honest with them about where my journey was and what I needed from them in regards to support. And I was like, you guys do whatever you need to do. There's no judgment here as to how you decide to spend your weekends and party and all these things. But if you don't see me as much, please, like, don't take it personally, but this is what I need to do for myself. And they were incredibly supportive of it, to be honest with you. I thought that I was gonna, a lot of people I feel like do have to get rid of some friend groups. But most of mine, even to this day, they're, a lot different than they were back then, because this was quite some time ago. But nonetheless, I just learned a lot of solitude. I spent a lot more time on my own self-development. I found a different partner at the time who was very straight edge in terms of, not really using drugs and drinking to the same capacity that I was before. So that was super helpful for me. And then truthfully, COVID happened. So there was a whole lot that changed in the world. And I spent most of COVID actually building a coaching business of my own, because I knew I wanted to start a business. So that was really where it kind of started. But I spent all this time behind a computer, absolutely hating my life, because I cannot be behind a computer. As you've experienced, everything that I do is no, I need to be like with somebody. I need to be feeling that like human connection in the flesh. That is where I thrive, and I need to be constantly moving. I can't just sit. So that taught me so much as well. I love the coaching aspect of it. Like when I was one-on-one with somebody and we got into a conversation and light bulbs were going off, like it was beautiful. But everything else that came along with building that business, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it. But that also gave me the confidence in understanding you can put 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day into a business of your own. So why aren't you doing it for your stretching business? Because stretching was extremely part-time at this point because of COVID, of course. Mm-hmm. And so now that COVID was slowly coming to an end and people were getting a lot more comfortable and most people were working again, all of those things, I was like, okay, I'm going full force into this and let's see what happened. And like I said, that was almost like a little push of me getting into alignment, because the moment I did that, my business just went boom and it exploded. And I was like, oh, okay, universe, thank you. That's when you know.
I love the way you eloquently said, like, I had to learn solitude. Mm-hmm. I actually had somebody here last night at the house and doing a coaching conversation for about long couple of 3 hours.
Because you're not a coach, right?
Because I don't do that. But you know, I did some things that violated my rules, my values, my beliefs. And so that was one of, and I'll give the guy version of, you know, your eloquent learning solitude and being honest and open to your friends about your journey. Mine was the 3 Bs. I called it the 3 Bs. No bars, no broads, no booze.
Okay, I love that.
So, you know, and it was just, you know, I stayed at home. I never went out. You know, I would maybe go out for a coffee or whatever, see a friend or whatever, have conversations. It wasn't like I made myself a hermit, but I just read. Mm-hmm. I read and I read and I read and I read about, you know, the things that affected directly what I impacted. I mean, ultimately, I impacted, you know, other people, or another person actually. But really where the impact was on myself because of the violation of the beliefs, the rules, and the values in order to meet my needs. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a really, you know, huge distinction that I don't actually, of all the people I've interviewed, I don't think I've heard that come out of their mouth, which is, you know, you have to learn solitude. You have to be okay with yourself. I mean, I'm not saying that people don't do it. Lots of people do it, mm-hmm. but not a lot of people talk about it as a tool to help yourself, you know, face fear. You know, most people talk about, well, there's a strategy and that strategy, and they want to keep it on the superficial level where it exists in your head, rather than I think, you know, and I guess the question that I would ask you maybe about this learning solitude was, what were the biggest epiphanies? What were the biggest outcomes that you got from that?
There's so much like wisdom in the stillness, right? Like when you are so still with yourself, and like some people might think being in solitude is me sitting on my phone. I'm not going out, so I'm just scrolling through Instagram. Like, no, that's not solitude. It's like sitting there and just being able to sit in the shit sometimes and sit through the storm and be like, okay, why is this coming up? Where is this coming from? And what is it trying to teach me? Not sitting there sulking. Sulk if you need to. I give myself some time to feel what I'm feeling. And if that is like self-pity or, you know, shame or guilt or whatever, okay, let's feel it. Let's let it move through us, because if not, we're just suppressing and repressing, and we're going to have to bring it out somewhere, or it's going to come out somehow when I don't want it to. Right. So a big lesson and a big, you know, epiphany was you need to be able to do some of this shadow work and this mirror work and see what is really the problem. What is really the problem? We try to be so sneaky with ourselves sometimes, and we cover up what the actual problem is with other little issues, right? Or we make other people's problems our problems because we don't want to deal with what is the actual root cause of my issue here right now. So I've gone through a lot of like, okay, where is the lack of confidence and the lack of self-worth coming from inside of me? So it's like, can you sit and have a conversation with your guilt and your shame? Because that was for me what was blocking it. But I needed to sit and actually learn that and just be with that part of myself. And I think there was a lot of acceptance of the darker parts of yourself that's been really powerful, because I think we cover up so many of these sides of ourselves that we are ashamed of, but really they need to exist. There's like duality in everything. There's yin and yang for a reason, right? We can't have one without the other. You can't have the brightness and the light without the dark. It's just not true. It's just not possible, right? And that's why I love to go into the trenches, because I'm like, there's so much learning in there. Maybe I'm a bit of a sucker for pain at the same time. That's what I've come to. Sucker for pain. Like maybe I do love it a little bit. I don't know, but I love it because I know what's on the other side of it at some point. So that just sitting and being with, and I recognized within myself in solitude that I was doing so much reaching out for other people and constantly wanting to socialize and do something because that made me feel important. If somebody else wanted my time, wanted my space, wanted my energy, perfect. Then I feel like I'm worth something. But if I wasn't, that's when I got into the like, oh my God, nobody likes me. Like what's the problem with me? But solitude, like you're by yourself and you're just like, no, you know what? I actually want to sit with myself and be with myself. And how can I start to like love this person? I'm still getting to know myself so much these days. And it's now when I recognize something about myself, it's so beautiful because I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that before. Like now it's just like curiosity and just pure gratitude for the awareness that that's even there. Whereas before it's like, nope, I just want to hide all these parts of myself. I just don't want to let the world know who I really am. And that's why I'm saying my work has literally made me face my fears, because my work is the only way that I can share what I do with the world is by putting it out there and by talking about it. And like you said, it's indescribable. And I even struggle. The amount of blank stares I have gotten from people when I try to have a conversation it's unbelievable. But it doesn't, honestly, I'm like, it doesn't matter, because the people that feel like they need to come to me for what I provide, like they know, deep down they know, and they might not know yet, but they will know when their time is right. And then they come and then they're like, oh, now I understand. And I fully trust that. That's something that I've learned now, how to trust.
Yeah. So I'm going to take almost a pause in the conversation and throw in a commercial for, Sophia Plank. Because you're right. It is tough for people to get their head wrapped around the concept of breath work that may free up something that is binding you. And you kind of said something earlier that made me think about that, which was like you said, like when we keep the darkest pieces of ourselves internal, then it makes it, that's where, dis-ease. Mm-hmm. You have dis-ease in your body and it can transfer into disease. And there's been studies that have shown that, cancer appears after, I think it's 7 years after a life traumatic event, whether it's to yourself or to a loved one. Not to get into that conversation, but what you do, and we did it actually, we did another breathwork session, before, and I've done breathwork before, and I've done, I've had lots of access to this. You're gifted. You really are gifted at this. And I'm going to say, like, if anybody is experiencing, I'll use the word dis-ease in their body. If they feel bound, if they feel tight, if they've got something that's going on, breath work is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. It shifts the body in a way that is just so fluid and non-invasive. And I mean, to me, it is a form of healing from the inside out. And you do an unbelievable job at facilitating it, whether it's in a group session or whether it's one-on-one. And so, it is, I remember the first time that I was introduced to breathwork, I was like, what is this holy shit?
Me too.
Because I'm a pragmatic business guy. And I mean, this is, a decade ago, maybe more. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, let's get back to strategy here. Like, and I've just found it, to be so helpful and so opening. So, I can't recommend you highly to anybody who is stuck in some way, and willing and open, and flexible to consider a strategy. I don't want to use the word strategy, but a process, right. Probably a better word, a process that is effective. So that's my commercial for you, Sophia, like, unbelievable. And not my first time, like, being treated by you, but like mind blowing. Also on the fascial stuff, like, you're incredible. So, amazing. Back to regular scheduled program. But you were talking about, this whole process of loving the pain. And I'm probably aligned on this. Like, it's kind of a bit of preaching to the choir, because I kind of just have this belief that the harder it is, the better it is for me. That might be a bit of a limiting belief. I'm not sure what some thought seekers would say about that, but I do just believe, like, part of it is I believe it prepares me for the potential worst that could come. But I'm curious, like, how do you see it? Like, you said, like, oh, I feel like I'm a little bit of maybe I said sadist, but.
Yeah. Sucker for pain. Yeah. I think it just helps to prepare me more for, like, to your point, what is coming. And it's not preparing you for the event that's coming, because trauma is not what happens to us. It's not the event itself. It's actually what's happening inside of my body. So the more that I prepare to be able to move through discomfort and to regulate myself when I'm dysregulated, the more that I'm going to trust myself that I'm going to be okay. And that just starts to eliminate more of the anxiety and the fears of, like, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And it's like, well, shit is gonna happen. So I want to make sure that I am best suited to take care of myself when it does. Because we all know it's going to. You're going to get hurt. Like, stress, trauma, all kinds of things are going to happen. This is the way life works, right? Again, it's your greatest teacher. Those things need to happen because you need to learn something. So for me, I put myself through the pain so that I know I can handle it when it's coming. And I want to move through it now so that I can move through it with more grace and with more compassion and with more empathy when those moments come. And for me, I mean, it's massive for me. Why? Because I'm taking people through theirs. And I can't take someone, I have to work on myself, because I can't take you as deep as I've gone, or I can only take you as deep as I've gone. So if I stop working on myself, then that puts a limit on you. And I want to serve people at the highest level, which means I have to continue to go into my own pain and my own, overcome my own struggles, because that way I can understand and I can resonate with you. And I think that's why a lot of people do come to me, because, again, I'm so open about what I have gone through, because I want you to understand that you're not the only person that's going through that, and that there's answers and there's ways and there's tools and there's people to help you. Not healers. I don't like the word healer, because we are our own healer, but there are beautiful light workers that can facilitate a space for you to feel safe to go within yourself, because the answers are already in there.
Yeah, it's a great way to say it. It's, as you were saying this, how do we teach people that this is available. It's actually not that difficult. And it's supportive, additive, curing, whatever the words are. I mean, because it totally just reminded me of a story, like a girl in our community and a friend of someone who works for us. I think she was 21 years old. Her and her boyfriend got in an argument. And she went out after, what, I don't know if it was by text or if it was by phone or what it was, but she went out after and she hung herself. And my wife and I have friends who had a daughter, beautiful young woman. This was a decade ago. Same thing. Got in an argument with her boyfriend over text and went out and shot herself. And it's like those things, just when I hear them, like I just get so heart-wrenched by them, that, there's all these things available that, not just the message that you're sharing, but the process and the execution and the understanding and the learning and the growing, and that there is going to be time in the future for you to, get through these things. Mm-hmm. And I just, sometimes it's lost on me, how many more people have to hurt and struggle, and we mask the shit. I mean, this will be controversial, but I really feel like we mask this stuff under what's the buzz phrase now? It's mental illness, mental health. Yeah. Mental health, mental illness, all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, it's just, there are people who are, mentally ill and they require medication, but not everybody. Right. And so, it's like mom and dad take them to a doctor gives them a pill and then they get forgotten. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what you would have to say about that, but it popped into my mind, and I often reflect on it, and truthfully, it hurts. It's because, I feel like, we could, meaning we as a collective, like, be in a place to solve some of these things if we were all just a little bit more aware, a little bit more educated, a little bit more understanding around some of the things that you're saying about, the acceptance of ourself. And, you said it like somewhat, we need to sit with our guilt. We need to accept the dark side of ourselves, and that's a tough process. I've been through that process, and it is, it's a tough process, yeah. But when you get through on the other side, it's like, holy fuck, there's so much joy from it.
Yes. I think more people need to understand that that's just humaning. Like, we are just humaning in this world, and that's part of it. Like, yes, on social media, we see these people having these incredible days every day because that's all they show. And so we think, what's wrong with me? I'm not happy every single day. I'm not having an incredible day, right? And so we think that there's an issue in that we have such a terrible life because we're not doing the same things they are every single day, not realizing they're human and they're going through the exact same shit. And so there's such a fear of judgment. That's why I feel like so many people aren't being themselves, because they're afraid to be judged. So they just wear things, do things, say things, buy things to make themselves look appealing to everybody else. And they don't want to step into their own truth and then voice that so other people could be like, wow, me too. Me too. Oh, that's normal? Amazing. And now they start not feeling so bad about all these things that they've done or things that have happened in their lives or whatever it is that they're feeling that they feel like is wrong. And they start to understand, oh, okay, this is actually just life. But there's so many of us that aren't doing it. We're not sharing part of our life, and we're just either masking it with drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, social media, shopping, whatever it is, because we're too scared to just step into ourselves and just let ourselves be who we are because we're afraid the world's going to judge us. And I've been there. And like I said, I'm still there sometimes. There's parts of me, but that's where I know I'm like, okay, sweet. I'm actually moving in the right direction because this is kind of scaring me. Perfect. I know I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing. So if more people, I think, would do that, and that's just following your heart. That's sitting with yourself and being like, what do I actually want? Like, what do I really actually want in my life? Do I actually need that car? Do I need that Rolex? Do I need this purse? Do I actually want that? Or do I just want other people to think I'm rich because I own a Louis Vuitton? Like, personally, I could care less. about a lot of those things because I understand that they're not fulfilling me. We're looking for validation externally rather than internally. And then we look at all these other people external to us and we see them having the life that we think they're having, which they're probably not. And then we think, okay, there's something wrong with me. And then it's like, okay, well, eventually you stack that on top of itself day after day after day. And you get to a point where it's like, I don't want to be here anymore because my life's not good. Right. And I think that's where all those like radical decisions are coming from, where we're losing people because they don't have someone that's showing them that this is normal, or they're just too scared to like continue to look out there for people that they do resonate with.
Yeah. And as you say that, it's kind of like they forget about, they lose sight of what the compelling future is, and although in the moment the pain might be difficult, if you just wait a few minutes, that becomes the past. And then if you have that compelling future, that vision, which is kind of like one of the things I liked about what, you didn't, I don't think you really said it, but you really had a vision. You knew in your heart that there was something bigger for you. Mm-hmm. And then you attached yourself to that, but you didn't know what it was.
And I still don't know what it is. And every year for a few years, I was writing goals out in January, things that I wanted to accomplish within this year. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And there's still some things that I write down because I think there's power in spelling, right? We are spelling, it's casting a spell into the future. And I think there's something very powerful there. But I've gotten a lot less attached to, okay, by Q1, I need to have this. By Q2, I want this. By Q3, I need to nail this. And I've started just getting into the idea of like, what is my intention? What is the intention for my business? Because I recognize that when I had this vision of like, okay, it's going to be brick and mortar. I want to be earning X amount of money. I didn't like the way that it was making me approach my business in a certain way and feeling like I wasn't accomplishing what I thought I wanted to accomplish because I wasn't getting there. And then I started to really sit with myself and ask myself, what do I want? Like, what does success actually mean to me within my business? And for me, it's just impact. That's it. So my intention going into this year is impact. How can I impact more people? And so, stepping into different modalities, it's like, okay, I can impact more if I advance my skill set more, because then I can serve more people on a different level that maybe need this. And that's why it's like, okay, if you're ready for like the physical understanding and awareness of what's going on in your body, sweet, let's do some FST. If you want to go deeper and you're ready to like face some other stuff that you need to discharge on your own, sweet, let's go into breathwork. And if you're ready for some more energy work and you want to actually connect to yourself and create space within yourself and start to unravel the parts of you that aren't you and start bringing out your authentic self, sweet, let's go there. So it's almost like a tier system, mm-hmm. right?
I love the goal thing. Like I stopped setting goals years ago. I thought like, goals are like, if you'd asked me, 8 years ago or whatever the time frame was, I'd be like, I set goals like da da da. And one of the things, I found was like, we so often overestimate what we can accomplish in the next week, month, year, versus, what we can accomplish in a decade. We underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade, and we overestimate what we can accomplish in the year. And it's like, I was talking to the person I was coaching last night. I said, Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire till he was in his like 60s or something. It was late 50s or early 60s. And it's not that $1 billion determines success. That's not my point. But my point is that there's time. Mm-hmm. There's time for us to be able to achieve these things. And I love, the intention piece. Like, it's really powerful, mm-hmm. really, really powerful.
I ask myself, like, if I'm leading with this intention, is that getting me closer to feeling more successful? And the answer is always yes. Because I know that if I'm sitting in my brick and mortar business and I'm still doing what I'm doing, okay, yeah, I have the brick and mortar business, but do those walls change anything? Absolutely not. If I can impact more through those walls, does it change something? Yes. So if I can, like, when and if I get to that point, incredible. I'm super happy about it, but I'm not attached to that. sometimes we have this idea of like where we need to get to. And it's like this endless horizon that we're chasing, because when we get there, we realize that didn't change anything. I'm still here. I'm still looking for something. So for me, it's almost like, can I just create more impact every single day? Can I impact one more person? Can I have one more person know what I do? Can I have one more conversation that's just going to help somebody? Like that to me is success. And then I'm like, okay, sweet. And get up tomorrow and do it again and do it again and do it again. And then everything else, like all the other wealth, is just a byproduct of that anyways. It's funny, like, we met at a golf tournament because I was, working at this golf tournament. I was sponsoring the golf tournament. I've been at 3 golf tournaments in the last month, and I don't get paid for that. So that's, 6 clients I'm losing in a day at least. But to me, I'm like, that doesn't matter. I know that this is also very beneficial for me and my business and networking and impacting more, because now I'm not seeing these 6 people. I'm seeing 120 golfers that are coming through. And maybe one of these is going to have is going to be very impacted by me. And I mean, it was perfect because look,
one of these a-holes might have a podcast.
That's how we met. So it's just beautiful. And the best part is, ever since I've started doing more for free, if you will, or donating my time and energy in that way, more has come from it. I've actually been getting way more people reaching out to me for other things, way more collaborations, more money for my services when I haven't even raised my own price. I'm like, okay, this is fine. But it's like the universe is just giving it to me. And I thought about this 2 days ago, and I was like, why is this like a thing? Because people always say, like, if you're just doing things out of the goodness of your heart, then it will come to you. And that was exactly it. I was like, I'm not connected to any finances. Like, I'm not connected to any money for this service. I'm literally just donating my time out of the goodness of my heart to try to connect with people. And it's actually coming back to me twice as much in other ways.
Yeah. And I would say, to that, I would say, to be fair, I would say we met not because you were there. We met because that was easy to facilitate a conversation that really like went to the next level. Right. But the reason why we met was because you were referred or highly spoken of by a guy that I highly respect, love and cherish, Pete. Mm-hmm. And, he has, so much regard and value for you and what you do. And I use the word value purposefully, because the more value you add to people's lives, the more they're going to share that. And, to your point, it's certainly not exactly how you said it and not as eloquent, but to your point, it's like, where are you adding value to other people's lives? I'm not asking you this question, by the way. Where are you adding value to people's lives that impacts them in a significant way, at a level that they can't get anywhere else? And that's how that's how you build yourself. That's how you build your brand. That's how you build your business. That's how you, or whatever it is. You could be, running a philanthropic organization, and when you're adding that much value, then that's where it really kind of shows up in my opinion, which is, very similar to what you kind of just said.
I love it. I think if you can continue to ask yourself, how can I value myself more, or how can I be more valuable to serve the collective on an everyday basis? I think that's very important. And I think that will take you so many more places than just doing the mundane day in, day out things that you don't like, because you're not serving yourself at the highest level. And when you serve yourself, you indirectly serve the world and you serve the collective. So like, that's why I exercise. It's like, I exercise because I value myself more when I put myself through that movement. It does so much for my mental health. And I know when I'm in a better state, then I'm a better human to everybody else around me. So I, do the things that I do. I drag myself through the breathwork trenches sometimes, because I'm like, I know right now we spoke about this earlier, and I said, when I'm getting really triggered and when I can notice that I'm almost at that, like, it's like a valve, right? Like a release valve needs to go off. I'm like, I know I'm peaking out here at how much capacity of stress I have. Like, I am highly stressed out right now. So I need to discharge some of this so that I'm not so stressed out and I can take on more stress, right? So it's like recognizing that time or that moment in yourself and where you're at, and then checking yourself so that you can be a better person for everybody else around you. So I know when I don't drink as much and, have these bad habits and toxic habits, I feel better as a person myself. Not only that, I'm a lot more connected to myself. All of these things that change our state disconnect us more from ourselves. Yes.
Agreed.
Of course. 100%. And that's why so many people do it, because they want to be disconnected from themselves, right? I want to be more connected, especially in the work that I do. I have to be, because I can't connect to another person if I'm not connecting to myself. No, sure. So I'm just saying, so it's very important for me to continue to maintain all of this work, and stay in that space as much as I can, because that's how I serve the world better.
Beyond the thought of disconnecting through whatever it is, alcohol, drugs, whatever, social media, it doesn't have to be like something that alters your state. It could be social media that alters your state. But beyond that, what other, because you talked about working out, but that the triggers of knowing, hey, well, like, I'm moving into a stress state, or I'm getting to the max limit, that I'm at a 9 out of 10, or I'm at an 8, or I'm, whatever it is. What are some of the, because I do believe that there's, there are some strategies and tactics, like it's like things have to be, you had talked about it really early in the podcast about, getting rid of bad behaviors and bad habits, and changing them. But it's like, so inside you start moving towards a stress state. What are some of the rituals? I'll use the word rituals maybe, that you use to go, okay, how do I, and that you might recommend, or that you've found that have been powerful for you as a woman in business, and just, you've gone, we haven't even talked about, like, it wasn't just your brother that died. You also had a sister that died. Right. And so, like, you've lived in, like, you've overcome some crazy things, and yet you still appear and show up as this powerful, young, intelligent, well thought out person and a woman. And it's like, I'm curious from that perspective, what would you share?